to the 425 here at the new 425 studios, live from Troy, Michigan. I'm at Coach Torres _ on Twitter. He is at Coach Miller 06 on Twitter.
What up?
We got a new producer over here at the 425, Cody Gibson. Cody, you want to say hi to the folks?
What's up, everybody? Thanks for having me.
Won't be hearing a whole lot from him. He's just producing in the background, put some graphics together for us. He's the one that came up with the logo and whatnot. So we're just bringing on some help. As you can see, we got a little different setup this week. Hopefully it'll just be bigger and better going forward. Any clunkiness, audio, visual stuff, just be patient with us as we figure it out. Jeremy, I know we had the wedding on Saturday. Everything went off without a hitch. Everybody looked great, ourselves included. But we were like a day behind on college football, man. So did you get all caught up? What'd you see?
Yeah, man. I was up till probably about 4 a.m. on Sunday. Got back to Texas at like 3 o'clock, and it was just catching up on football from that moment on. Took a brief pause in between so I could watch the Cowboys game, but other than that, it was all catching up on college football, and I got myself caught up and ready to talk some ball today.
Yeah, I was lucky enough to see the first and fourth quarters of the Michigan game. Watch your sister get married during the second and third quarter and halftime, so I got lucky there. Church was just a couple miles down the road from my house, but yeah, we got to watch the Bama-Tennessee final at the wedding also, sitting at the table, man. Bama misses the game-winning kick, lose out on that game. Tennessee goes down and gets the job done, man. Hendon Hooker throws 5 touchdowns. Jalen Hyatt catches 5 touchdowns. Man, what a performance.
Yeah, man, I predicted Tennessee to win that game. You can call it a feeling, or you can just call it, like you said last week, you can't ever count out Bama. You can't ever count out Saban. But there's been too many signs this year for me not to think that they were going to drop a game. We've seen the sloppiness with penalties ever since the Texas game, and it's kind of subsided a little bit, but it's still been costly in other games as well. And it reared its ugly head again on Saturday, and it was just not a good look. And this has got to be the worst playing Alabama secondary I can ever remember seeing. And it's not because they don't have good players. It's just for whatever reason, they haven't played well this year.
And that's not something you're used to seeing. I mean, the Nick Saban defensive back that's what you want, bro. It's at the next level. I mean, that's a no-brainer, no doubter there. Yeah, they're heavily penalized. I didn't get around to watching that tweet you sent me earlier where Saban's calling some guys out on some accountability, and not totally sure what's going on there. But do you have any insight on that?
I just sent out a tweet to you earlier today, and it was just during his press conference, basically like, hey, like, just, if you're making mistakes, like, then you may get passed over. And I know that they were without Eli Ricks right now, and they've got some other injuries, but I mean, it's halfway through the year. Every team has injuries, and Bama's always been one of the very, very, very few teams that can actually, like, next man up mentality. It's like actual true, because they got 4 stars and 5 stars behind the starters. So
they give gray shirts to 4 stars, man. There can't be any complaints about injuries out of that program. Even obviously Bryce Young and Jalen Miller are 2 very different players, but on paper, ain't nothing to complain about, Bryce played out of his mind Saturday also. Like, none of that game falls on his shoulders. Like, that's a dude who just continues to show and improve. That he's going to be a day 1 draft pick, and maybe a top 5 draft pick.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really want to get into too much scouting today, but it's just going to be really hard for any other quarterback to surpass Bryce Young in my mind, even at this early in the stage. And I know Levis and Stroud and Hooker all have the measurables you want, and they all have like the traits you want. But I mean, every time I see Bryce Young, he's one of the most poised quarterbacks I've ever seen. doesn't get rattled, moves around the pocket exactly the way you want to, feels the pressure. And that's one of the very few things that's not coachable. Like you can't teach somebody how to feel the pressure coming
Yeah.
and when that's going to happen.
And there are guys that can move around and do feel it, but they might not stay calm. They might not keep their eyes downfield. They might look at tuck and run. And you don't.
Yeah, he's just steady Eddie and always seems to know where the ball needs to go and puts it there. He may not have the strongest arm, but the ball's going to get to where it needs to go because he's got the anticipation to know where to throw the ball.
Yeah.
But other than that, man, I mean, we hyped it up last week. A lot of media members were hyping it up last week, but last weekend really lived up to the hype. The only game that didn't was the Michigan-Penn State game, which we'll get in on the Homer Pod. But the rest of the games were TCU, Oklahoma State was a ball game.
It was a ball game.
NC State played their game close with Syracuse without Leary.
Yep.
And Florida State hung with Clemson until they didn't at the end. And DJU, he looks like he keeps checking off boxes.
Hey man, I saw a play from DJU where he stepped up in the pocket and he threw the ball downfield a little bit, had a little bit of touch, had some accuracy, man. We've been saying, like I said, we're not going to talk about it ain't scouting season yet, but
yeah,
he's answering a lot of questions that he has proposed himself the last year and a half,
yeah.
He's playing really well, and that's going to make them a lot more dangerous than they are.
Yeah, he looks like the actual 5-star that he was supposed to be, like we talked about a few weeks ago. And speaking of guys that are having a bit of a redemption, I was a little critical of Cam Rising last week, and he had himself a redemption moment, and he had to drive on multiple occasions to get them back in the game, and he did it without hesitation. And I know USC's secondary isn't very good, and they had some miscues that were obvious, but I mean, Cam Rising still made the plays and he was still hitting. I feel like Utah is about to be tight end because they just always seem to have two tight ends that come through there.
Dalton Kincaid had 16 catches for Lord knows, Cody, what was Dalton Kincaid's stat line from last week? You can pull that up. Yeah, man. And I called that Utah win, and I picked Utah to pull that one out because it's just like USC is going to drop one of these ones that they should. They generally do. First year, like I trust Lincoln Riley, but things are just going a little too well for them. It's going to happen at some point. So there we go. And Utah's not a bad team at all. Not a bad team.
Yeah. I mean, we've had some upsets and I kind of got a rise out of you a little bit last week when I said I'm getting kind of some 07 vibes, but yeah, here we are. Last week happened, and I'm still getting some of those 07 vibes, man.
Vibes,
and
vibes,
yeah,
but it ain't no carbon copy just yet.
No, not yet.
Let's see.
But yeah, I mean, with that being said, I noticed it going over my college pick'em results, which I didn't put as much detail in as I usually do with everything going on with the wedding, but I still ended up 5-5 and 85% overall in the year. And I mean, it just seems home field advantage is a little bit more important this year than it's been in the past. And obviously home field advantage, especially in college football, is always important. But this year, I think it's going to swing those games. I mean, LSU got blasted at home, but I'm kind of leaning towards taking them in this week's upcoming game, and kind of upsetting whoever's coming in there. Who does Tennessee play next week? I can't remember.
Let me see. They got UT Martin, bro. So they're.
Oh no, not UT Martin. LSU's playing.
LSU, Ole Miss at LSU.
Yeah.
So hey, that could be is Ole Miss going to win out until they play Bama? I'm not totally sure about that.
Oh, they're playing Ole Miss. Yeah, LSU's playing Ole Miss, and I'm kind of leaning towards picking LSU at the moment.
Steve Martin's also a prop comp. Right, so looking at just rounding out the games from last week, Kansas dropped one to Oklahoma. Oklahoma had Dylan Gabriel back, and he promptly threw for 400 yards. Down goes James Madison. They get in their top 25, and they take an L to Clay Helton and Georgia Southern there. Let's see. Oh, Notre Dame. What is you doing, Notre Dame?
This is one of those looking like Oklahoma and Notre Dame are having those first year from hells kind of things that some of these bigger programs go through. And you never kind of know how it makes year two a little bit harder and a little bit more of a priority to have a good season, because then if they don't have a good season in year two, then year three comes the chirps of he's on the hot seat before the season even starts. And I'm not trying to put anybody on the hot seat, but I mean, you have the Alabamas that you're going to have a good year after your first year being crappy, or you're going to have a Charlie Strong at Texas where it just never clicks.
Where you have year two looks eerily similar to year one, and then year three, and that's when you know this isn't working.
Yep. It happened with Michigan with Rich Rod, and you just never really know.
Yeah, and Brady Hope to some extent too, where it's just like we didn't get better, never got better.
Yeah.
One more top 25 game. We had Kentucky. Will Levis returns, threw for 230 yards, and Kentucky topples Mississippi State. So I picked the Bulldogs in that one. But
yeah, I did too, because I didn't know. I wasn't able to know if Will Levis was going to go or not. So I was just like, okay, if Will Levis isn't going to go, then I'm not going to pick them to win that game. And then he plays, and that would have changed my pick on that one for sure.
Oh man, they finally got Chris Rodriguez going for 196 yards. I'm just seeing that here for the first time.
Will had a nice bounce back game after being hurt. I still have some nitpicky things with his ball placement, but I mean, that's just me being super nitpicky. Like, I know that.
Oh no, I don't think he's nitpicky with his ball placement. I think that's one of his biggest legitimate concerns.
Because even he's known to have a pretty deep ball. We've mentioned it on this podcast a few weeks ago, and we both like his deep ball. But the last deep ball he threw for a touchdown, the receiver legitimately had to stop and wait for the ball to come to him, and he still ended up scoring. But it just wasn't man, I would have liked you to hit him in stride there, and I know you've got the arm for it, but for whatever reason it didn't happen. And speaking of quarterbacks coming back, Arkansas got KJ Jefferson back, and that seemed to solve a lot of issues with them as well, because they throttled BYU. They throttled.
It's not on our radar at all. I was shocked to even see that scrolling late night. Arkansas is at BYU right now. That's not one you see very often.
No.
And Arkansas went up there and throttled them. What was the other? Okay, it was Levis and Jefferson. You wanted to say returning, and then they had success. Before we get into previewing next weekend for a little bit, you want to throw a couple names out there that you're thinking are atop your Heisman ballot right now?
Yeah, Hendon Hooker's the leader. How can he not be after what he's done this year and what he just did to Bama?
I'm big in Hendon Hooker's camp right now. We put that track out there last week. That thing blew up because, like you said, Vols fans are hungry for it. And we mentioned last week, hey, they've kind of done this every once in a while, but are they going to stick around? And, hey, man, you beat Bama. It's not a be-all, end-all, because look at the Aggies last year. They beat Bama too, and look at them now. But it's certainly a step in the right direction. So good on Josh Heupel.
And I wrote in my article on Monday that the jury's. I'm more of a believer now, but their schedule doesn't lighten up. They can't They got UT Martin, and then they got Kentucky after that.
Yeah, they got Georgia left.
Yeah, they got Georgia. I mean, they've got a tough schedule left. It's not easy pickings for them the rest of the way.
The SEC.
After that, I mean, you have to put CJ Stroud in the conversation.
Yeah, number 2
the stats, I don't have Blake Corum as high as you do, but with his stats, he's got to be in the top 5 because he's absolutely carried this team to where they are this year.
Yeah,
and we'll
we'll cry about that with Chase Brown having a couple more yards than him, but like you're really knowing your Chase Brown. Blake Corum was on my list last week.
And I don't have him in my top 7, but one to watch for me for obvious reasons and other not so obvious reasons. And but for him to enter the top 5, his stats are gonna have to be a little better than what they've been. But Bijan Robinson is the workhorse for the Longhorns, and if they keep winning, he's going to be a big reason why. And he certainly was against Iowa State. But again, he doesn't have nearly the stats that he's had in past seasons up to this point. But he's still been a big part of the offense, and
yeah, rounding out my top 7 that I published on the Patreon, which you can find at 425 over there. Number 4, Bryce Young. Number 5, Dorian Thompson-Robinson. Number 6, Jahmyr Gibbs. And number 7, Caleb Williams. So those are the 7 guys that have grabbed my attention. And if Hendon Hooker keeps finding Jalen Hyatt like that dude might end up on that list at some point too. So
yeah, absolutely.
All right, let's
the only other thing I kind of want to give out some props to the ACC. We gave them a little bit of love a couple weeks ago, but I mean, it legitimately seems like they've been clowned on the last 4 or 5 years for being Clemson and nobody else. And this year they've got, I really do believe they've got four or 5 really good teams, and maybe that costs them a playoff spot. Maybe it costs Clemson a loss. This is going to be I really wish that the Pac-12, Big Ten, ACC alliance didn't ruin us having a college football expanded for this season last year when they shut it down, because if there was going to be a really good year to have an expanded playoff, it's looking like this year. I think there's going to be a lot of good football teams left out of that top 4.
Oh, you pull up the ACC standings? Sure. Yeah, man, we're looking at Clemson is not quite what they've been. Clemson, the defense certainly is, but you're looking at Clemson, you're looking at Florida State, Syracuse, North Carolina State, right there.
North Carolina still only got 1 loss. I mean, I anticipate them.
Hey, they made it back in my top 25. Drake May's out there fooling and booling, putting up numbers. So
yeah,
they're definitely in contention out there. But like you said, maybe can one of these teams jump up and bite Clemson? Oh, Wake Forest too. You can't forget about Wake.
Nope.
Clemson already put them down in a very close game. So can one of these teams jump up and bite Clemson? Maybe, maybe not. The rest of them, will they cannibalize each other? Yeah, they're going to, just because there's 5 teams that can play some ball. So
and I mean,
now right now Syracuse is the clear number 2, but we're going to find that out this weekend, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, I've already heard some media members say they're discounting what Syracuse has done because they haven't really played anybody. And they beat NC State with Leary out, and that was their one good game so far this year.
So we got a couple ranked matchups. You got Syracuse at Clemson. You have UCLA at Oregon, Texas at Oklahoma State, and then in the evening, Mississippi State at Bama, and then Kansas State at TCU. So that's all going to shake up the landscape quite a bit there.
Yeah, it's a pretty next week is a pretty decent slate.
Pac-12 is going to
The last thing I want to get to is we touched on the USC loss earlier, but do you think USC's loss killed their playoff hopes for the Pac-12 as a whole. Because I know they've got 3 or 4 good teams as well, but they look like the lesser conference just because their bottom teams are worse than probably every other conference's bottom teams.
Yes, I will say that.
I just don't see a one-loss. I don't see a one-loss Pac-12 team getting in the playoff. I just don't. I mean, I think a 2-loss SEC team would get in over a 1-loss. I mean, obviously, I should clarify that because it depends on the name. Because if it's a 1-loss USC or a 1-loss Oregon, that's enough of a big name brand for them possibly to get in. But I just don't see a 1-loss Pac-12 team getting in.
So what they're looking at right now is UCLA is going to have to win out.
Yeah.
The only for Oregon to make it to the title by to the playoff. By the time that rolls around, everyone will have forgotten week 1.
Yeah.
Certainly, if Georgia drops one at some point.
There's some people that
then you're looking at right now. We are going to have a ranked matchup: Utah, Oregon. If Utah continues to win, and if Oregon, first of all, they got to beat UCLA. Whoever wins that game is the only team that maybe besides USC that's going to have a shot out there.
Yeah.
If UCLA wins out, then they'll have a shot because they're going to have to beat USC and they're going to have to beat Oregon.
Yep.
If Oregon wins this game, that puts them back into contention, but they would need to win handily, and they would need to beat Utah. They need Utah to keep winning, and then they would have to beat, who would it be, either USC or UCLA in the title game? Because they just take top 2 teams, right?
Yeah, I think they changed their rules last year to where it's the top 2 teams that go. It doesn't matter what division they're in.
So Oregon will have to win out with 2 or 3 impressive wins to get back up. Because, they're lingering around the top 10, but you're not going to see them in my top 4.
Yeah, I think that whoever they play in the conference championship game has to only have 1 loss, and that the other team has to win. If both teams in the conference go in with only 1 loss, then I'll give them a chance to make it. But if they're playing like a 2 or 3 loss team in the conference championship game, it's not going to be enough to get it done.
All right. Yeah, that pretty much. I don't think I have anything else I want to get off my chest on the national slate. Like I said, we got matchups coming up. We're trying some new stuff over here. Like we kind of mentioned earlier, we're bringing Cody on to help us produce and get this out maybe a little bit faster. We have a space now. Jeremy and I are obviously apart, so we're going to continue to do it over Zoom. It's worked out well for us so far. But so just be patient as we add to the experience and everything that we got going on here, and stick with us because this is all roads at the 425 lead to the NFL draft. So we're just getting started over here.
Yeah, I mean, this isn't even as much fun as we're having. This isn't even our fun time of the year.
This isn't even what we want to be talking about.
Yeah.
We'd rather be talking about quarterback play and offensive line play and not doing these sports center hits essentially. But
gushing over combine numbers and
But hey, we'll have 4 or 5 months solid of that. So it's another 6 weeks and it'll be draft season essentially. So thank you all for tuning in. This has been the 425 National Pod, and we'll see you over there at the Michigan Pod.
Yeah, and just come check out our work on our Patreon and just and come check it out. It's got good content, light reading. It doesn't take much. So if you like what we say on here, just come read some of our stuff. That's obviously where you're going to get our draft guide in April. So just continue with the little bumps in the road. We're going to have some of those, but we're going to work through them and it's going to get better.
Yep. Now that we have our producer here, I'll have Cody throw up all the where you can find us on our other social channels because we're on everything now. So hopefully we'll see you guys there. Thanks for tuning in.
Thanks, guys.
No disrespect, but that's how I am.